Hello and welcome to our English news coming to you live from Canal, Algérie. First, the top stories of the news. Algeria advocates from Johannesburg for Africa's stability and development on the second day of the G20 ministerial meeting. The alleged French aid to Algeria vehicled by the French far-right figures are denied by the French Agency for Development. And a delegation of Algerian MPs denounces from Tindouf province the stark Moroccan violations and calls for self-determination to the Sahrawi people. Welcome back to our English news. First in the news, on behalf of the President of the Republic, the State Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, National Community and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, took part in the G20 summit being held in Johannesburg, South Africa. Taking the floor, the Foreign Minister indicated that Algeria fully supports the four priorities included in the address made by the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa during the opening session of the proceedings, deeming it important to tackle the main challenges hindering stability, development and integration of Africa. And let's now have a listen to Algeria's Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf.
Algeria believes that time has come to seriously tackle the major impediments and hurdles to Africa's stability, development and integration. In this regard, three endeavors that are, in my view, of strategic dimension and nature deserve our full attention. The first among them is that of reforming the international financial and monetary institutions. We need institutions that are representative of today's world and which can respond timely and efficiently to the variety of challenges affecting developing nations.
Still with the G20 summit on the sidelines of the summit, the Foreign Minister held bilateral meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, EU and Cooperation of the Kingdom of Spain, José Manuel Álvarez Albueno, who reiterated thanks to the Algerian authorities for actively contributing in freeing the Spanish national Navarro Canada Joaquim last January. He reiterated his country's support for Algeria's role in promoting stability and development in the Sahel-Saharan region. The two sides reviewed ways and means of upgrading relations and mutual confidence to promote bilateral cooperation. They discussed as well the situation in Palestine, stressing the necessity to find a fair and lasting settlement to the conflict in the Middle East on the basis of the two-state solution. And on the sidelines of the same summit, the head of the Algerian diplomacy held bilateral discussions as well with his Chinese, Turkish, Indian, Norwegian and Japanese counterparts, in addition to that of Korean Republic. These meetings were a good opportunity to evoke bilateral relations and cooperation in addition to issues of common interest at the international level. To another story now. Today, the French Development Agency refuted far-right claims of aid to Algeria, clarifying that these are business credits for French companies driven by self-interest, not generosity. Madame Afa with more.
The xenophobic faction in France has been calling for punitive measures against Algeria, including the withdrawal of what they claim is French development aid. However, the so-called aid exists only in the imagination of racist circles in France. In reality, it consists of credit lines of French companies to maintain their share of the Algerian market. Recently, MP Sarah Knafo sparked controversy by claiming that France provides Algeria with 800 million euros in development aid annually. The French Development Agency quickly refuted this, stating that no loans have been granted since 2005. Algeria continues to repay past debts but has received no new loans. The only recent aid-funded project backed by 0.7 million euros French government subsidy supports a training partnership with the University of Brest.
Alors nous, on fait rien en Algérie. On a fait, je crois, 700 000 euros.
Oui.
Il y a un chiffre, j'ai vu d'un chiffre de 136 millions d'euros.
We have contributed, I believe, 700,000 euros. I have seen a claim of 136 million, but let's be clear, 92% of that is scholarships for Algerian students in France studying in our universities, many of whom work and stay here. If that's considered development aid, so be it, but none of it goes to the AFD.
Au développement, l'appui qu'on donne à des gens qui viennent étudier en France, puis qui souvent, vous le savez, restent en France et travaillent.
These far-right propagandists should be reminded that, under the Algerian-French Social Security Agreement, Algeria paid nearly 94 million euros to French hospitals between 2010 and 2019, and over 23 million euros from 2020 to 2024 for citizens' medical care in France. Exploiting the Élysées' silence, the far-right spreads propaganda without verifying facts, relying on a judiciary prone to double standards. Meanwhile, it ignores France's internal crisis, which lay bare the repeated failures of a struggling government.
And from Europe to Africa, while some look away, Tindif remains a stronghold for the Sahrawi people. Algerian parliamentarians reaffirm their support, denouncing injustice and urging global commitment to their right to self-determination. Story by Manal Maf.
The Algerian government and diplomatic corps joined Sahrawi parliamentarians in denouncing Makhzen-led violations and stressing the role of parliamentary diplomacy. They also emphasized the role of parliamentary diplomacy. Meanwhile, the Sahrawi president Brahim Ghali reaffirmed his people's right to self-determination.
It is a battle of survival, a combat for liberty, for independence, for the right of self-determination. It is necessary to refer to judicial mechanisms set by international law.
This visit of the Algerian parliamentary delegation to the Sahrawi refugee camps represents an important step to promote parliamentary action to higher levels.
The goal of this visit is to inquire about the new information and steps to follow in order to support this cause. It is a great initiative. This allows the Algerian National People's Assembly's MPs to inquire about the situation of our Sahrawi brothers.
Expanding solidarity campaigns for Sahrawi people's rights just cause is a core principle of parliamentary diplomacy, which supports them on both African and international levels.
You are still watching Canal Algérie. Coming up in our news. The cement industry in Algeria is booming, with a steadfast determination to conquer foreign markets and diversify Algeria's exports outside hydrocarbons. Welcome back to our news. Morocco is still imposing silence on occupied Western Sahara. The latest maneuver is preventing European MPs from entering Laayoune with fake excuses, when in reality the Makhzen spares no effort to cover up its violations and crimes. Litis Qawi reports.
Yet another slip by Moroccan occupation forces. This time it was 3 MEPs who paid for the price for these unjustified violations. As soon as they arrived from the Canary Islands, the Spanish MP Isabel Serra Sanchez of the Podemos party, the Finnish MP Twisi Saramo of the Vasimisto party, and the Portuguese MP Catarina Martinez of the Bloco de Esquerda party, who came to visit occupied Laayoune at the official invitation of the Sahrawi collective of human rights defenders CODESA. They were simply prevented from carrying out an inspection visit to the occupied part of Western Sahara. According to the testimonies of the 3 members of the European delegation, the Moroccan authorities prevented them from getting off the plane on the pretext that they did not have a permit to enter the city.
Hola, estamos aquí en el Laayoune.
This illegal detention is preventing us from doing our job. As MPs, we are here to inspect the follow-up of the implementation of the cancellation of the agriculture and fishing agreements of the EU and Morocco, because the latter exploits the resources of the Sahrawi people.
Y ahora mismo estamos retenidos por parte de marroquíes que ni siquiera se han identificado.
The Spanish party Sumar called on its government to ask Morocco to provide explanations for preventing a delegation of Basque parliamentarians from entering the city of Laayoune in occupied Western Sahara, describing the Moroccan action as extremely dangerous, especially since it was an official visit by Basque parliamentarians of which the ministry was informed in advance. abuses that add to a long list of bans on access to the occupied territories of Western Sahara. 2 days before, the Moroccan occupation authorities expelled the Spanish journalist Asia Aldea Esnaoula and the Spanish-Swiss influencer Ramila de Aventura from the occupied Sahrawi territories, a restrictive measure aimed at preventing foreign media and international observers from documenting human rights violations against the Sahrawi people. The Association for the Protection of Sahrawi Prisoners in Moroccan Prisons and the European NGO reports more than 311 foreigners from 28 countries prevented from entering the occupied Sahrawi territories since 2014. Moroccan occupation forces expelled and prevented these human rights activists from documenting human rights violations. Since the beginning of this year, the Moroccan occupation has prevented 10 foreigners, including 3 parliamentarians from the Basque country, from entering Western Sahara.
To another story now, George Ibrahim Abdullah, a name that resonates with many, is the oldest political prisoner in Europe that has been detained for over 40 years. In the latest development of his case, the judicial decision was once again postponed, making his hope for freedom slimmer. More details with Leticia Sadqawi once again.
After more than 40 years in prison, George Ibrahim Abdullah will have to wait again. The Paris Court of Appeal has decided to postpone its decision on the Lebanese activist's request for release until June 19th, once again relaunching a case with strong political and diplomatic implications. His lawyer, Jean-Louis Chalancé, denounced his attitude to the press, calling the postponement of this decision a legal pettiness. On November 15th, the Anti-Terrorism Sentence Enforcement Court had nevertheless given him a glimmer of hope by ordering his release. This has fueled the mobilization of his supporters in France, and for years his supporters have denounced judicial harassment and a political case that goes beyond the strictly legal framework.
Ce qu'on attend, c'est la libération.
We are waiting for George Abdullah's release. He is an anti-imperialism activist that has been detained for more than 40 years. He is the oldest political prisoner in Europe. We are waiting for his release because he fights for the legitimate rights of Palestinians.
Arrested in 1948 and sentenced in 1987 to life imprisonment, George Ibrahim Abdullah is today one of the oldest prisoners in Europe. However, he has been eligible for release for 25 years, but all his requests for release have so far been rejected. The question therefore remains unanswered. Will George Ibrahim Abdullah one day regain his freedom, or will he remain hostage to primarily political decision?
From France back to domestic news, Algeria is making big strides in terms of cement industry, with production reaching 30 million tons. The sector, meeting the local needs, is trying to conquer foreign markets with the help of the authorities to diversify Algeria's exports outside hydrocarbons. More details in this concise report. Algeria produces 30 million tons of cement annually, reflecting the success of the state's strategy in developing the construction sector and expanding its presence in the global markets. The Holcim Algeria Group, a leader in the industry, upholds international standards and provides innovative solutions for a more sustainable economy. The investment climate is marked by transparency, fostering the growth of new projects. We have initiated the process to reduce CO2 consumption, a strategic objective embedded in all our actions. Algeria exports cement while ensuring the preservation of its renewable energy resources. Authorities overseeing the energy transition are collaborating with manufacturers to promote factory decarbonization and facilitate large-scale exports, particularly to Europe. While meeting domestic demand, the construction materials sector is committed to positioning its products in international markets, contributing to national economic recovery through the diversification of non-hydrocarbon exports. And finally, the Algerian writer Yasmina Khadra was awarded the Casa Mediterráneo Prize in Alicante, Spain, for his valuable literary contribution in the Mediterranean basin. So let's see and follow these moving moment. With this, we come to the end of our news bulletin. Tomorrow, another day, other news. Thanks to the director, Tayyip Elias, and the technical crew. Take care and bye-bye for now.